so long and I'm tired. The lies, the cheating with men, with his bodyguard at some point. I'm done.
Well, everything couldn't make was 4 episodes.
Right.
So it was a lot. You had to pick and choose things. Like even in an area where he chooses to date people who he knows previously dated someone. He has a baby by a woman that was dating Tupac.
Wow.
To add to it, but we had to cut it down so we couldn't.
For time.
Yeah.
So are you coming out? I know next year is going to be a number 2. Season 2?
I just put it on YouTube.
I just put it on YouTube. Well, we can subscribe and get it. I
beef with, or have a beef with Ja Rule.
That's an old school. But
I understand in October you did something to get back at Ja Rule.
Yeah.
And please tell the people what you did.
I bought like the first 4 rows in his concert.
I bought the first 4 rows in his concert?
Yeah, they was like on Groupon for $15. It wasn't anything. They was showing me the stuff on there and my sister and stuff. And I said, yo, they put concert tickets in. And I looked and his tickets was there. I was like, how much are the tickets? $15. I said, okay, give me the first 4 rows.
Gave him a brown paper bag. He was just putting stuff in there. So I said, damn, he got to go put it on the counter and, show everybody what he's getting. So as he going, I'm just looking at the places where he picking stuff from. So there's one part he picked up some things from up here on my left side, and then he picked like quite a few of them down. I'm like, okay. He put them in the bag. So when I went by there and I looked up there, and it said plugs, and I was like, hey yo, what are you getting this for? And it said plugs, and he was like, yo, can I do my shopping by myself? I said, yeah, you could do it by yourself, brother. Next thing you know, somebody rang the doorbell. We had the presidential suite where we was at. So I opened the door and the dude said, yo, I'm here for my cousin. I said, who your cousin? And he said, Ja Rule. I said, well, he busy right now. He said, he busy doing what? I said, he with Puff. They're in the room. They busy. They don't want to be bothered. He said, well, I'm going in.
You found the letters of your boo loving up on your cupcake and cellmate, your little fruit. Open your mouth. Tell the truth. Gene was talking about you when he had to throw your cousin up there in the piano. Tell the truth and shame the devil.
Sheesh. All right. So along with this whole
Go turn on your wife so you can play hide the soap. You fucking ain't got no respect for women. They ain't got no respect for women. Ooh, they give birth to your children. They put up with all of your shit. They got to listen to everybody gossiping about which you're fucking when the truth is you're fake niggas. And you probably suck better than your girl.
A friend of yours, which is P. Diddy, Sean Diddy Coombs. What's your take on what's happening with him?
Again, man, it's another black man in this industry going through some unfortunate, circumstances. And so, I wish him luck as well with everything he's going through. And, and if there's victims in this, I can't speak on things that I don't know about Pierce. And so I try not to. I try to leave those things to those who do that. That's why people have podcasts and stuff like that. They talk about these things back and forth. I don't really get involved with that, but yeah, I wish everybody, love and pray. Stop! I'm doing an interview, baby. I'm live on TV. I'll check y'all later. I'll come golf with y'all later. Yeah.
Who's that, Diddy?
But who?
Was that Diddy or Fiddy?
Who? Fausto. That's my guy, Fausto. You got jokes, Pierce. I see you got jokes.
For years, people brushed it off as petty rap beef, random crashes, and old grudges that never died. But now it looks like everything was building toward this moment. After nearly 25 years of marriage, Ja Rule has reportedly filed for divorce. And not over money, not over irreconcilable differences, but over a betrayal so explosive it's blown the lid off years of rumors, tension, and uncomfortable questions. According to claims coming directly from his wife Aisha, The man who's been spiraling online, lashing out at 50 Cent, and defending the indefensible wasn't acting out of pride or principle. He was panicking. And now that she says she's done covering for him, all those moments that never quite made sense are suddenly lining up in a way that's impossible to ignore. What exactly is being exposed? Why now? And how far does this fallout really go? Because if this divorce is already this messy, the aftermath looks even worse. What looked like another messy celebrity breakup is turning out to be something far more explosive, because Ja Rule's reported divorce filing isn't the quiet, paperwork and privacy kind. It's the kind that happens when humiliation goes public and secrets refuse to stay buried. After nearly 25 years of marriage, this split didn't arrive with a carefully worded statement or a mutual agreement to move on peacefully. It landed like a reaction, not a plan, and according to people close to the situation, it was triggered by exposure, not exhaustion. That context suddenly casts a different light on Ja Rule's recent behavior. The online spirals, the emotional posts, the nonstop lashing out that fans initially chalked up to old grudges and unresolved rap beef. What once looked like random anger now reads like panic. The timing matters here because the divorce comes after months of visible tension, public defensiveness, and erratic energy that fell off even by industry standards. Instead of moving quietly, Ja Rule appears to be walking away at the exact moment his personal life allegedly became impossible to control, and that's why this filing feels less like the end of a marriage and more like the fallout from something cracking open. When someone who's spent decades carefully managing an image suddenly starts crashing out in public, it's rarely about just one argument or one bad week. It's usually about years of pressure finally collapsing all at once. And now that the marriage is reportedly over, people are realizing that what they were watching unfold in real time wasn't just a feud or a phase, but the warning signs of a much bigger reckoning that was always headed toward this moment. According to claims circulating around the split, the breaking point wasn't a private argument or a slow emotional drift. It was a moment of exposure that went public and couldn't be walked back. Aisha is being accused of releasing damaging material involving someone close to Ja Rule, and while the specifics have been deliberately kept vague, the impact has not. What matters here isn't the spectacle of it, but the timing and the source. This wasn't a leak from an outsider or a random rumor catching fire online. It allegedly came from the one person who had spent years standing between his private life and public scrutiny. That's why this moment hits differently. When protection turns into exposure, it doesn't just embarrass, it detonates trust. Insiders say Aisha had been holding things together quietly for a long time, absorbing the stress, deflecting questions, and keeping certain stories from gaining traction. So when she allegedly decided she was done doing that, it wasn't impulsive, it was final. The sense of betrayal Ja Rule is reportedly feeling isn't just about what came out, but about who stopped keeping it in. That context makes Ja Rule's recent fixation on 50 Cent suddenly look a lot less emotional and a lot more calculated. For weeks, he's been publicly attacking 50, accusing him of hypocrisy, questioning his motives, and framing himself as someone standing on principle. At the time, most people assumed it was just another chapter in a decades-long feud that never really died. But now, with the divorce filing and these new claims surfacing, the timing feels anything but random. The attacks start to resemble preemptive damage control, an attempt to weaken the credibility of the one person who might be able to say something damaging next. If you can convince the public that someone is unreliable, biased, or morally compromised, then anything they reveal later automatically sounds suspect. What once felt like an emotional outburst now reads like strategy. What's making this situation even more volatile is the growing sense that whatever has already surfaced may only be a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Multiple voices close to the industry are hinting that there's more material, more receipts, and more context that hasn't seen the light of day yet. And the idea of unreleased footage or unseen evidence doesn't need to be confirmed to be powerful. It just needs to be believable. The possibility alone is enough to send someone into crisis mode, especially if they know their image has been carefully curated for decades. When your reputation rests on people not looking too closely, the threat of further exposure can feel worse than exposure itself. That looming unknown, what else exists, who has it, and when it might come out, is what seems to be driving the intensity of everything happening now. In response, Ja Rule hasn't gone quiet. He's gone on the offensive. Rather than addressing the allegations head-on, he's attempted to flip the narrative by resurfacing old accusations against 50 Cent, presenting himself as someone brave enough to speak up while others stay silent. By posting past reports, court documents, and inflammatory commentary, he's trying to reposition himself as a whistleblower instead of a defendant in the court of public opinion. The message is clear. If there's wrongdoing to talk about, let's talk about everyone's. Whether that move is convincing or transparent depends on who's watching, but the intent is unmistakable. This isn't just rivalry, it's reputation warfare. And when someone starts throwing everything they can find into the public square, it usually means they're trying to drown out a story they're afraid is about to get louder. For years, the back and forth between Ja Rule and 50 Cent has been treated like background noise. An old-school rap feud that never really ended, just went dormant and flared up whenever one of them got bored or felt petty. Fans laughed it off, especially after moments that felt more like trolling than real hostility, and the assumption was always the same. This was ego, history, and unresolved pride playing out in public. That's why Ja Rule's recent behavior didn't immediately set off alarm bells. People thought they'd seen this movie before. But what's changed is context. With new claims surfacing and a marriage unraveling at the same time, that petty beef framing no longer holds. What once looked like rehearsed antagonism now feels reactive, defensive, and unusually intense. The tone shifted from jokes to desperation, and that's what's forcing people to look back and ask whether this feud was ever just about music, or if it's been masking something much deeper all along. As attention turns away from the rap rivalry, it lands squarely on a marriage that's reportedly been under strain for far longer than most people realized. Sources close to Aisha suggest this wasn't a sudden snap, but the result of years of pressure, silence, and unresolved issues piling up behind closed doors. There have been moments in the past where she publicly hinted at problems, moments that were either brushed off or quickly forgotten once the headlines moved on. Those call-outs now feel less like emotional outbursts and more like warning signs. The picture being painted is of someone who spent years protecting a partner's image, absorbing the fallout privately, and being expected to hold everything together while the cracks widened. Reaching a breaking point in that situation isn't about revenge, it's about exhaustion. And if these claims are accurate, this wouldn't even be the first time she felt compelled to expose the truth just to be heard. Adding to the complexity are the voices that have floated around the industry for years. People who have made comments, dropped hints, or shared stories that never quite gained traction on their own. These aren't being presented as proof, but as context. Long before this divorce filing, there were whispers that certain dynamics behind the scenes weren't what they appeared to be. At the time, those rumors were easy to dismiss as clout chasing or industry gossip. Now, with multiple narratives overlapping, those old comments are being revisited through a different lens. Not because they suddenly become facts, but because patterns start to emerge when stories told years apart begin to rhyme. This isn't about believing everything. It's about recognizing that none of this appeared out of nowhere. What stands out just as much as what's being said is how often uncomfortable questions were avoided altogether. Over the years, Ja Rule has consistently responded to serious allegations and controversial topics with vague language, softened phrasing, or a refusal to engage directly. Public interviews where he downplayed serious situations, brushed off concerns as unfortunate circumstances, or shifted focus away from specifics, now look less accidental and more strategic. Silence can be powerful, and so can carefully chosen words. When someone avoids clarity long enough, it creates just enough distance for stories to fade without ever being addressed. That approach works until it doesn't. And once the people doing the protecting stop playing along, The gaps left by deflection become impossible to ignore. At the center of all this chaos is one glaring issue: accountability. Despite everything unraveling, the divorce filing reportedly frames the collapse of the marriage as a response to betrayal rather than a reckoning with the behavior that led there. Blame is pushed outward instead of inward, as if exposure is the greater crime than whatever made the exposure possible in the first place. But once protection ends, control disappears. Stories that were once contained don't vanish. They multiply, especially when others feel emboldened to speak. The fallout doesn't stop at one relationship ending. It spreads into every area where silence once held things together. And that's why this doesn't feel like a conclusion. It feels like the beginning of a much louder chapter. With the marriage reportedly over, alliances shifting, and more people revisiting what they once ignored, the whispers are turning into conversations. What stayed buried for years is suddenly being re-examined in real time. And the longer this plays out, the harder it becomes to put anything back in a box. If Aisha truly meant it when she said she was done protecting him, then this story isn't winding down, it's winding up. And judging by how much has already surfaced, what comes next may be even harder to control.